recycled materials, the labels, are put into a drawer, and you can win back your council tax for the year. So naturally, everybody's recycling like mad and tacking labels on, and you can get that. So you can encourage people, but penalising people. Who do you think is going to pay for this army of inspectors to go through our rubbish? We're going to pay for it. It's going to be a form of disguised tax. So that was a very long answer to what was actually just a one-sentence question. But that is my overview on the green issue. I promise my answers won't always be as long. Yeah.
Right, we've got several hands up.
Yeah, they've had time to say that.
Do you have 2 questions?
Sure, as long as you remember them.
I wanted to go back briefly to the green issue. And like what you said, thinking positively rather than negative. Do you think there's a lot of individual action stuff that's just window dressing and perhaps propaganda that the government is going to take responsibility? And one of the things that I admire about the Conservative Party is that you want to try and conserve things that have been valuable to us and not throw things away just because they're old. But climate change obviously is something which totally threatens every part of our way of life, potentially if it happens severely, as already established. And in order to conserve our environment, surely we do need massive action, and this is the big issue. And how do you see the Conservatives taking forward action to save our planet from being destroyed? If you don't see, you mentioned international action, but this must be surely the biggest issue of interest.
The Conservative Party, for a start, have pushed the whole thing right up the agenda, as you're well aware, and have made it a major issue. And other parties will have to respond to that. I actually imagine the Green stuff will be quite big in the general election, but I also have to be honest, I don't think it's going to be decisive. And a good test of that was what I said to the gentleman there. There was an assumption wrong that we were going to introduce taxation on driving to out-of-town supermarkets. And lo and behold, all these people who were so screwed up about the environment went into rebellion. Yes, we're worried about the environment, but we don't want to have to pay. So I don't think it's going to be decisive. But I think it will be big. I think it will be bad. But I can only say to you what I've already said, which is that the only solution that's actually going to make a difference, is going to save the planet, if you want to talk in those terms, has got to be an international one that is focused on the biggest offenders. Now, I'm not saying we haven't all got a part to play, but the part that the rest of us have got to play is nothing like the part that they've got to play. And put yourself in their positions. And they're regenerating their economies. They're emerging economies. I mean, China, that's been an agrarian economy for so long, now switching to an industrial economy. Of course they want the easiest and the most straightforward way of doing it, which is fossil fuels. So we've got to accept that you're not just going to be able to say to them, oh look, this is a bit tough on the polar bear. You're going to do that. And that's where the solution's got to lie. What I want to hear from any party is what we're going to do internationally, or what we can do internationally.
All right. Yeah.
Can I just ask what you think of Gordon Brown's new style of conceptual politics, and would you join? Would you join government? If you asked?
I would not join the Labour government. I want to join the Labour government. I'll join the Labour Party and campaign for them, and hell will freeze over first, I can assure you. This is not consensual politics. This is a game of window dressing. Gordon Brown wants to appear to have a very, very big tent. But the fact is that Labour ministers and Conservative ministers before them have consulted the opposition, have taken advice. When I was the Social Security Minister, one of the people I spoke to a great deal was Frank Field. Because Frank Field is a recognised expert in the Labour bench, on the Labour benches, about Social Security. And I had many a conversation with him, private, off the record, to tap into his brains. There's nothing to stop Gordon Brown doing that, and he probably does already do it, with a large number of us. I mean, if, for example, in my own particular area of expertise is prisons. And any Labour, and I have actually, Home Secretaries, Labour Home Secretaries have asked me to go and see them to talk about prisons. But I wouldn't dream of joining some advisory team and being seen as part of the government. Forget it. What?
Right. As Suzanne said, there was such a Shadow Home Secretary. So I was just wondering what you feel can be done about youth crime and young culture in Britain at present. And just a little add-on question. As you're a one-time participant and then judge in slightly picked on, I feel a more important issue for Britain at the moment on a national level is childhood obesity, and what you think can be done about that.
Okay, right. Well, there are two very different topics. One is teenage crime. The other is childhood obesity. I think the answer to teenage crime is multiple. It's not any one thing. But if you actually look at what Giuliani achieved in New York, he achieved it through zero tolerance. Now, we can't import the Giuliani model, lock, stock and barrel into this country. There are all manner of reasons, which I could go into, why you can't do that. But we could take the basic principle, which is that the answer both to reassuring people about crime and deterring people from crime, and knowing where to look when you're detecting crime, is actually a very large, visible police presence, particularly in difficult areas. Now, at the moment, the police can hardly get through the door of the police station for the paperwork they've got to do. And if they arrest an offender, even for something as basic and routine as shoplifting, when they take that offender back, or suspect as he would then be, back to the police station to be charged, it can take anything up to 7 hours to process him through custody. Now, in that 7 hours, that police is not doing what he should be doing, which is back on the street arresting more shoplifters. So one of the answers to crime that I have always advocated is a really visible and effective police presence on the streets, and particularly in difficult areas. Then you have to tackle one of the most serious causes of crime, which is that of drugs. Drugs account for 1/3 of all crime and 80% of all acquisitive crime. And if you could make a difference on the drug scene, you wouldn't eliminate it, of course you would. But if you could make a difference on the drug scene, you could make a real serious difference to the crime figures. 95% of all street prostitution is because the poor forlorn souls are on Class A drugs and can't get off them. And wherever you look, drugs are a tremendous scourge. So I think you need a visible police presence, and you need to tackle the drug scourge. But then there are things you need to do much earlier on. Much earlier on. Pretty well any teacher of any reception class can say to you, that one, that one, that one, who 15 years down the line will be the inhabitants of Her Majesty's prisons. And usually it is because of the background that they've come from, the dysfunctional and disorderly nature of the homes. 70 to 75% of those who end up in prison are 70 to 75%, think about that for a moment, are either completely illiterate and innumerate, or if they're not quite that, they're wholly without qualifications. They come from desperately disordered backgrounds. They've got parents spaced out on drugs, no dad at all, procession of men called uncle. They're the lucky ones, actually. The unlucky ones have got a stepdad with whom they don't get on, who's violent and who very often kicks them out even before the legal age of 16. And they truant away large swathes of their secondary education, and they're excluded from the rest. Now that's serious. I wish I